She was forced to wash dishes at a gala unexpectedly revealed as her millionaire husband's home. Jessica scrubbed relentlessly at the greasy plate in her hands, the warm water stinging her skin while the faint sound of laughter and music floated uninvited from the ballroom. The gala overflowed with glitz, each guest sparkling in sequins and designer gowns, while she remained hidden amidst the chaos of the kitchen, a world away from the extravagance that surrounded her. For a moment, she wanted to scream, force her way into that radiant ballroom where her place should have been assured. Instead, she could only tug the hem of her stained apron tighter around her waist and focus on the relentless dishes in front of her. Each time the kitchen door swung open, a gust of opulence rushed in, filling her with equal parts longing and dread. David had always been an enigma, a man who had won her over with charming smiles and sweet love notes, but it never crossed her mind he was part of this elite assembly. Who was she, a waitress from a small diner, to be connected to a world of wealth that felt so foreign? As she rinsed the sudsy dishes and pushed aside her thudding heart, she recounted her childhood, the messy kitchen, her mother's tired hands, the haunting mantra of hard work and loyalty echoing in her mind. And here she was, lost in a sea of luxurious chaos, like a ghost from a past she thought she had left behind. The whispers began to tighten around her, muffled conversations about a project that would rattle their community. Her heart raced with the realization that the mansion belonged to David. She held her breath, feeling small and insignificant, a micromolecule in a vast expanse of wealth and ambition. Tension coiled within her as she overheard snippets of gossip, the possibility of demolishing a piece of her childhood for profit. Confusion twisted her gut, and a wave of betrayal crashed over her. David's vision threatened the home and livelihood of those she loved, the very essence of the community that shaped her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. She clenched her fists, frustration battling with love. Could she confront David? Her elusive husband who had never shared his wealth. The facade of normalcy he had constructed began to crumble, revealing an unsettling truth. How could he toss aside the very values they once admired together? The slicked back hair and polished suit that he wore felt like a betrayal. She was more than a servant. As his wife, she deserved to be more than an afterthought. That as whispers surrounded her, Jessica felt herself being painted as just another servant. The weight of their implications bore down on her, flame-like indignant doubt sparking within her. She wasn't just a waitress anymore, she was a voice waiting to be heard, yet she hesitated at the threshold of exposure. The aching urge to reveal herself surged against the reality of the life she had chosen. Could she risk it all to advocate for what felt right in her gut? Would David see the devastation his decisions could brew? In that moment of anguish, uncertainty loomed large like the towering walls of the mansion around her. The gala continued, laughter echoing like sirens, but she stood frozen in a crucible of moral turmoil, the flickering light of her identity fighting to break free. What did she want? Justice for her community, or to remain in the gilded shadows of a life that felt increasingly hollow? Jessica braced herself, heart thumping as she contemplated the choice before her, the decisive confrontation lingering just beyond the kitchen door. The clinking of glassware echoed softly from the ballroom, stoking the fire of conflict within Jessica. She put down a plate, abandoning it to the steamy basin, and pressed her palms into the counter, trying to suppress the whirlwind of emotions coursing through her. The laughter and music resonated like a haunting melody, calling her to a life she feared she could never embrace. The thought of confronting David filled her veins with ice. What if he dismissed her? Would he laugh at her? The unknown loomed threateningly, and yet, the notion of remaining silent while he toyed with her past and community felt unbearable. She had spent her life navigating conversations that demanded courage, the discussions with her mother about making ends meet, the debates at the diner about the fate of their small town. This weight clung to her now. The stakes had risen exponentially, and she knew that this moment would define them both. But beyond fear lay an ember of determination, a latent strength she had not acknowledged. Wasn't she worthy of standing in that glittering room as an equal? A fleeting image of David's smile crept into her mind, but it was quickly overshadowed by his disconnection. What good were sweet notes and charm if he turned a blind eye to the damage his ambitions inflicted on her community? She straightened up, the weight of the apron inexplicably pulling her downward, reminding her she no longer wanted to be seen as an invisible fixture in the background. Taking a deep breath, Jessica stepped toward the door, her heart pounding like a drum roll in anticipation of defiance. Each step toward the exit felt agonizingly slow, her mind racing with questions. What if it turned into a confrontation she couldn't handle? Would he be able to reconcile the stark realities that framed their lives? As she gripped the doorknob, she paused. In the haze of the moment, another realization washed over her. She had spent so long being molded by the expectations of others. Maybe, it was time for her own voice to emerge. The door swung open with a creak, and the din surged. She hesitated, her resolve wavering when confronted with the glamorous assembly. The taste of history, her own history, vivid and painful, swept through her. She could feel the weight of their gazes, their perceptions already casting her in roles she refused to accept. What would they see in her? The waitress? The wife of a wealthy developer? Or could this moment reshape her narrative entirely? Jessica spotted David across the room, surrounded by laughter, his polished exterior radiating confidence. Yet, beneath that veneer, resentment bubbled like a dormant volcano. Here was the man who held dominion over the decisions shaping her community and possibly ruining her childhood memories. A surge of adrenaline propelled her forward, pushing through the throng of conversations and mingling couples. Forcing herself to maintain poise, she approached him, a world of possibilities buzzing just beyond her reach. The fabric of her identity rippled beneath the surface, the hesitation of yesterday replaced with a resolute spirit. But she needed to frame her words as firmly as her resolve. "David," she began, her heart racing, "we need to talk." The laughter dimmed momentarily as he turned, surprise flashing in his eyes, but she saw more than just confusion. There was an unmistakable glint of apprehension. In that instant, Jessica knew she had the power to renounce a narrative crafted for her, to reclaim her voice within their shared reality. What she didn't know was how intensely the clash of their worlds would unfold. Would her confrontation have the power to shift something within him as precarious as her hope? As she stood there, heart in her throat, the air crackled with potential, both exhilarating and terrifying. She braced herself knowing that the next words she spoke would redefine them both. But her moment was now, and she would seize it. The time had come to face the truth, hers, his, and the uncertain future that lay ahead. Jessica's heart pounded as she stood face to face with David, the vibrant chatter of the ballroom fading into a dull hum. In that moment, his smiling acquaintances blurred, and it felt as though the world had shrunk down to just the two of them. The expectations swirling around her, the role she had always unknowingly played, felt burdensome, stifling, and yet she stood there, ready to fight for a change, not just for herself, but for everything she held dear. "Talk," David echoed, raising an eyebrow and shifting slightly as if he intended to excuse himself from the conversation, the laughter behind him beckoning like a siren's call. "Right now? Why not?" She pressed her lips together, forcing brightness into her expression. It was essential to control her tone, to wield it effectively like a finely honed tool. Thoughts raced in her mind, options to convey, points to address, but each boundless whisper was eclipsed by her rising conviction. Because he hesitated, searching her gaze for something he could use against her. In his eyes, she saw the shadow of their past, the old, tired stories. They had once been more friends than enemies, but Jessica was finished with complacency. "Because you're not welcome to my community anymore, David," she asserted, leaping over the hesitation of her previous self. "Your projects are hollowing out the lives we built. Do you even realize the weight of that?" His demeanor flickered momentarily, surprise morphing into defensiveness. "Jessica, it's not that simple. I'm doing this for progress. These changes are necessary. She interrupted, cutting through the layers of justifications that rolled off his tongue like polite platitudes. Necessary for whom? You. Or the wealthy investors who barely glance at our town while they count their profits? A subtle shift occurred within David. His brow furrowed as he clenched his fists. The facade of a confident, untouchable businessman began to crack, revealing a hint of the vulnerability beneath the polished veneer. What do you want from me? He demanded, his tone a mix of anger and curiosity. You have no idea what hard decisions I'm faced with. Then enlighten me, she shot back, an unexpected fury bubbling from her core. She wasn't just grasping for fairness anymore, she was claiming it. It was exhilarating and terrifying, ripping the fabric of old narratives that had kept her safe but silenced for too long. The air thrummed with tension. Their shared history loomed large, yet this was about courage, her voice carving space within the cacophony even if that voice was quaking. Don't you see the impact of your decisions on the community? Don't you care? I care more than you realize, he countered, but the crack in his bravado revealed a flicker of uncertainty. Do you care enough to face the consequences? Because I refuse to stand by and watch as the people I love are bulldozed in the name of progress. Jessica felt a power surge within her, igniting the realization that she was no longer merely a prop in his life. He stared, silence stretching between them like an impending storm, before he said slowly, and what do you propose? Let us confront the developers. Let us open up dialogue with the community. You need to face what your ambitions have wrought. In that moment, as a new resolve firmed her stance, Jessica felt a shift beneath them. This wasn't merely a confrontation, it was her quest to rewrite their stories into a narrative that valued solidarity over ambition. She was determined, but as David's expression morphed into contemplation, she wondered if this was the key to unlocking something more than mere negotiation. Could he see this as an opportunity for redemption? Or was he too cocooned in his world of ambition to break free? She stood poised, teetering on the precipice between their past and an uncertain future. Would he rise to the challenge, or would this confrontation be a moment of yet another lost opportunity? Just as the edge of hope began to envelop her, his gaze shifted. Perhaps it's time we both confront the truth of our decisions, he murmured. Revealing a different aspect of their complex relationship, a flicker of understanding amid the tension. Jessica braced herself. The confrontation had just begun, but the possibilities were unfolding, twisting in unexpected directions. What would they uncover if they journeyed down this path together, not as adversaries, but as former allies seeking change? Feeling a knot of anxiety in her stomach, she knew the stakes had grown infinitely higher. The battle was far from over, and if they were to venture into this territory, the root of their differences would need to be unraveled. What truths lay hidden beneath layers of denial, and would they be able to confront them? Sensing the power of the moment, Jessica couldn't help but wonder what would come of their unfinished dialogue. Would it lead to a shared vision or escalate further into conflict? Jessica took a deliberate step back, her heart racing as the reality of their exchange flickered in her mind. The richness of their history, intertwined with every moment spent in each other's company, felt like an anchor holding her down, but the tide of her resolve was beginning to rise. For so long, she had been a passenger in this narrative, passively accepting the waves of change David churned up for their community, but now she felt the stirring of agency within her. Thursday, she said suddenly, her voice steady yet firm. When you meet with the developers, I want to be there. It's time to confront not just them, but ourselves. We need to be honest. David's expression shifted, he was caught off guard by her audacity. You want to come to the meeting? You think that's a good idea? The disbelief in his voice tempted her to second-guess herself, but she steadied her gaze into his. Why not? You might find my perspective valuable, just as I hope to find yours. Despite everything that has happened, we both know this requires a deeper understanding of our roles, our responsibilities. She exhaled, the weight of the conversation wrapping around them like a dense fog. The thought of facing the developers herself was terrifying, yet liberating. This was not merely about standing up to them, it was about standing firm in her truth, unearthing the depth of her convictions amid the chaos they had generated. As the chatter of the ballroom resumed, a strange calm settled over her. She gripped the edge of the table beside her, feeling the coolness of the wood grounding her. The room filled once again with laughter and festivity, creating a stark contrast with the weighty conversation they were having. How easily distractions mask discomfort, she thought. Jessica, I know you believe this is the right path, David began slowly, the defensiveness slipping from his voice like an old coat discarded. But I don't just want to confront my decisions, I want to ensure that we don't jeopardize everything we've worked for. This isn't just about you and me anymore. A flicker of doubt sparked in her mind, but she quelled it. Then let's redefine everything we've worked for, she replied, her voice echoing with defiance. What good is progress if it comes at the cost of those who built this place? Can't you see how your vision has overlooked the very foundation we're standing on? For a long moment, they were locked in an unyielding gaze, both wrestling with the implications of this new partnership they were forming. Was it truly a collaboration, or would they find themselves locked in yet another philosophical struggle? The meeting is at 3, he finally said, breaking the tension. I'll let them know you'll be joining. But Jessica, you need to be prepared. This isn't going to be easy. Maybe it's time someone made things difficult for them, she declared, her statement hanging in the air like a challenge. As she turned to rejoin the party, a jolt of adrenaline surged through her. She could feel the flicker of hope burning brighter within her. The prospect of confronting David's developers filled her with a mixture of dread and anticipation. She wasn't just stepping into a meeting, she was stepping into the unknown terrain of her own assertiveness. In that moment, she realized the real confrontation was with herself. She had to dig deeper, unearth her strengths, and face the prospect of failure, the very specter that had haunted her for so long. Could she truly articulate her vision amidst the towering ambitions of others while standing alongside David? With every heartbeat pounding in her chest, Jessica understood the road ahead would not be straightforward. She had a clear path ahead, but obstacles littered it, and in doing so, she would have to enter the conversation laden with vulnerability. As she navigated the crowded ballroom, the exhilaration of her impending confrontation began to ebb and flow. Could she navigate these waters and emerge unscathed, or would this be a journey that demanded more from her than she was willing to give? With her resolve hardening, Jessica found herself at the threshold of her evolution. As their upcoming meeting loomed ahead, she sensed a pivotal moment was near, one that could either bridge a new understanding with David or shatter all their ties completely. What truths remained to be uncovered in the murky depths of their shared past, and just how far could her resolve carry her? The next morning, the daylight filtered through the curtains, casting an uneven pattern across Jessica's living room. She paced the floor, her mind a cacophony of thoughts swirling around the impending meeting. She recalled David's expression when she proposed to attend, a blend of shock and uncertainty. It was a depiction of her own internal struggle, to assert herself amid the shadows of someone else's ambition. Confidence was fragile, she realized, an illusion easily shattered under the weight of past experiences. As she prepared herself for the day, she meticulously planned her approach. Holding on to her composure would require an intricate balance of assertiveness and vulnerability. She was determined to confront the developers not just as an individual, but as a voice representing those who had been marginalized. What tools did she possess, and which hidden strengths might emerge in the heat of debate? In front of the mirror, she focused on her reflection, willing herself to step out of the confines of self-doubt. She practiced her opening lines, pacing her breaths like a boxer readying for the ring. We need to reassess your vision. The community deserves better. Each time she uttered the words, they gained more conviction. The hours dragged on, yet anticipation morphed into adrenaline. She reviewed all the data on community needs. She had gathered statistics outlining the potential impact of development on local families, the voices of those displaced. Her strategic angle sharpened with each passing minute. It was imperative to combine her emotional dedication with factual evidence. She couldn't afford to let passion alone lead the charge. As she made her way to the meeting venue, each step felt weighted with significance. How different she felt now, standing in her truth. The streets buzzed with people unaware of the battle she was about to engage in. The mundane hustle of urban life contrasted sharply with her inner storm. Could she break through the wall of indifference built by those who held the power over her community? Walking into the conference room, Jessica felt a mantle of determination envelop her. She locked eyes with David, who was already present, conversing with the developers. Their conversation abruptly halted as he turned to her, his eyebrows raised in surprise and a hint of admiration. A small thrill ignited within her, her presence was recognized, the space soon filled with the tension of confrontation. Jessica realized that every word exchanged would hold profound weight. The developers had a clear agenda, ready to promote their self-serving interests, but she was resolute, she would not shrink back. Time to execute her plan. "Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of the community today," she began, the room shifting to focus on her. "I believe it is essential that we address not just the objectives you have put forth, but the impact they inherently carry." With each sentence, she wove together her understanding of the developments alongside the real-life consequences on the families she sought to represent. The developers shifted in their seats, feigning indifference, but Jessica noted the subtle shifts in their expressions. Perhaps they were starting to understand the emotional gravity behind their architectural ambitions. As the discussion grew heated, she noticed David's posture subtly change. No longer merely an observer, he leaned forward, his investment in her voice palpable. It appeared he might finally see the importance of challenging the narrative they had both allowed to unfold, and then the unthinkable happened. One of the developers interjected, dismissing her concerns curtly. "We don't have time for feelings, Jessica. This is business, not charity." The sting of his words pierced her defenses, but something fundamentally shifted within her. All the hard work she had put into preparing for this moment now felt ready to erupt. "Then allow me to introduce a new perspective on your business," she shot back, voice steady but infused with emotional undercurrents. If they viewed this solely as a transactional venture, she would ensure they would see the tangible consequences of their decision-making. A fire ignited inside of her, she could no longer stay silent or accept things at face value. As the meeting unraveled, flashes of vulnerability emerged, revealing truths lurking beneath the surface. Jessica confronted her own fear of being dismissed as an emotional voice, while the developers' reactions promoted a cycle of push and pull. Would her courage be enough to break their transactional mentality? New resolve fueled her words, and she delved deeper, uncovering layers of uncomfortable truths. She was determined to lay bare the reality they wished to overlook. The stakes felt higher than ever, and for the first time, she realized that her voice carried more power than she had ever given it credit for. In that charged atmosphere, something essential was waiting to be revealed. Would she manage to consolidate her vision and challenge the developers' perspectives effectively, or would they crumble the resilience she had been striving to forge? Only by confronting these powerful adversaries could Jessica unlock the potential within herself. As she pressed on, the ebb and flow of emotions became tangible. She sensed a turning point approaching, an inflection that held the potential to redefine not just her relationship with David, but her standing in the community she so passionately wished to serve. What new revelations awaited her, and would she find the strength to genuinely articulate the truth that pulsed through her veins? The atmosphere in the conference room grew thicker, a blend of tension and anticipation crackling in the air. Jessica's heart raced as she faced the developers, each of them seemingly untouchable in their suits, symbols of authority and indifference. Yet, as she leaned into her newfound confidence, she felt a subtle shift, a growing resolve that amplified her words. "Communities are not merely metrics on a spreadsheet," she continued, steadfastly challenging the apparent monopoly of the room. "They're comprised of families, of lives that can be irreparably affected by decisions made in these walls. You are not just building apartments, you are building futures." The measured tone in her voice surprised her, each phrase solidifying the foundation of her argument. She could see David nodding slightly, an affirmation she hadn't anticipated from him. His unspoken support bolstered her presence, reinforcing that perhaps she wasn't alone in this endeavor after all. Jessica's mind churned, recalibrating in real time. She had studied every report, memorized every statistic, but now it wasn't just about data. It was the stories of the people. The single mother who would lose her home. The elderly couple who had invested their lives in that neighborhood. With each story she shared, her voice gained strength, echoing through the cavernous room. One developer, a grizzled veteran known for his no-nonsense attitude, raised an eyebrow. Emotional appeals. 1T changed the facts, Jessica. Our plans are already in motion. It's too late to pivot. His dismissive tone cut deep, yet it ignited a fire within her. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a battle that demanded more than mere facts. I never said this was just about emotions, Jessica retorted, surprising herself with the fierce defiance in her voice. It's about the sustainability of a community. If you proceed with this plan, you may indeed reap short-term profits, but in the long run, you'll create a barren landscape where once stood a vibrant community. Is that what you want your legacy to be? The room paused, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a dense fog. She could see the gears turning in the minds of the developers, their earlier certainty cracking just slightly. In that moment, she felt a ripple of empowerment wash over her. Could it be that her voice truly had the capacity to sway the very foundation of their intentions, but doubt crept in at the edges of her mind. What if they disregarded her entirely? What if they laughed her off, shrugging off her words as sentimental drivel? She remembered her past, the times when she had shied away from confrontation, allowing opportunities to slip through her fingers. That reckless abandon, however, was a phase she had outgrown. Then it occurred to her that her strength lay not just in her argument, but also in her willingness to be vulnerable while standing firm in her convictions. She thought of her community and the families depending on her to advocate for their plight. Each person was more than a statistic, they were a lifeline to her purpose. Realizing this, Jessica summoned up an even greater determination. Nothing in life worth having comes easily. If you want this project to succeed in a meaningful way, you need to collaborate with those affected. Hear their stories, incorporate their needs. Only then will you truly build a development that benefits all. A pause ensued, silence cloaking the room as the developers shifted, visibly unsettled. She had breached their seemingly unassailable fortress with authentic appeal. But would they capitulate? Then David caught her eye, his expression no longer one of mere observer but as a collaborator. It was the first time she noticed how their professional rapport could evolve into partnership. She had something to offer him, an assertive voice, a perspective forged through lived experiences, and the tenacity to challenge complacency. As the meeting began to shift in her favor, Jessica felt the weight of her voice amplified. But just as she prepared to deliver her final thoughts, a sharp knock on the door broke her momentum. A newcomer entered, radiating authority, and immediately, the developers straightened. Who was this individual, and what influence would they wield over the meeting? Jessica's heart raced, questions flooding her mind. Would this be a reinforcement of her stance or a powerful adversary stepping into the fray? In that moment, she realized the stakes had grown higher. She was not merely an advocate anymore, she was a contender in a larger game, one that demanded unwavering resolve. Would her trajectory of empowerment continue, or would it take a dramatic turn? The figure at the door was tall, exuding an air of authority that seemed to pause time itself. His tailored suit commanded the room's attention, causing even the most hardened developers to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Jessica's instincts screamed caution. The arrival of this seemingly influential newcomer tilted the balance heavily in favor of corporate interests. Who was this man, and what did he want? Apologies for the interruption, he said smoothly, his voice resonating like polished steel. I'm Greg Thompson, the new financial advisor for this project. Jessica's heart sank a little. She recognized the name. Thompson was known for pushing aggressive financial agendas that often snuffed out individual voices in exchange for higher profits. The developers' previous uncertainty began to evaporate, replaced by the confident smirks of those who felt they had reinforcements. Ah, Greg, glad you're here, one of the developers said, the camaraderie apparently instant. Jessica was just outlining her concerns about community impacts. You know how it goes, an idealist trying to derail progress. The air thickened again with palpable tension as Jessica's mind raced. Here was her chance to cement her role as more than just a voice in the room. She needed to confront this adversary head-on, turning the uncertain momentum back in her favor. "Actually, Greg," she interjected, her voice steady, "I was emphasizing the importance of sustainable development not just in financial terms, but human ones as well. People's lives are at stake here." She felt a spark of defiance ignite within her. This was the moment she had to step firmly into her own narrative. Greg raised an eyebrow, and his mouth curled into a slight smirk. "And do you consider yourself an expert on financial impacts, Jessica? The community won't be living on sentiment alone." The challenge hung in the air like a weighty sword, and rather than retreat into discomfort, Jessica felt the tide shift within herself. His arrogance was a call to action, not a deterrent. "I'm no financial expert, Greg, but I'm an expert on the lives affected by your decisions," she shot back with newfound vigor. "If you proceed without considering the community's needs, the project may financially prosper in the short term, but it will ultimately lead to emotional and social bankruptcy. What is the value of wealth if it comes at such a cost?" She could see the flicker of a challenge igniting in his eyes, and in that instant, she realized this whole encounter could play to her advantage. If she could expose the flaws in his reasoning, reveal the implications of a purely financial mindset, she could potentially swing the room back to her perspective. "Are you truly suggesting that ignoring human lives can be justified by profit margins?" Jessica continued, her voice rising, demanding attention. The developers shifted nervously. It was a rare sight to see them rattled. Jessica could hear the whisper of her own heart racing, but she didn't let it deter her. Instead, she pressed on. "The stories I shared, those are the very foundation of growth, of what it means to build a community. Without that understanding, we risk creating a project that stands as a monument to greed." David's eyes narrowed slightly to convey his approval. Jessica was grateful for that unspoken bond, but it was breathing life into her goals that propelled her forward. She felt emboldened, pitched into a larger struggle where her voice could serve as an instrument of change. But just as she prepared to deliver a final, decisive appeal, Greg stepped forward. "Jessica, let us be real. You're in over your head if you think emotions can sway investors who are here to only maximize profit. This is a corporation, not a charity." The intensity of his rebuttal hung heavy between them. Jessica felt the world constrict, doubt raced through her. Was he right? She had spent the last days arming herself with information, conviction, but could her passion actually shift the entrenched mindset here? As the developers murmur among themselves, a percolating energy arose within Jessica. She was staring into the face of a system designed to overlook voices like hers, yet she wasn't merely fighting for the moment. Her professional development was at stake, and she could feel the wheel of destiny turning beneath her, presenting her with a choice. The room held its breath, the stakes pushing hard against her yielding strength. Would she succumb to fear of dismissal, or transform her vulnerabilities into an immense catalyst for change? With a deep breath and her heart coursing within her, Jessica stood tall. This meeting was her battlefield, and she was determined to emerge as a formidable force. The question loomed larger now: would her emergence awaken the change she sought, or would she falter in the face of unyielding bureaucracy? The silence grew thick, almost stifling, as Jessica confronted Greg's dismissive challenge. This was not merely a corporate meeting, it felt like a crucible, a moment meant to test her resolve. Would she retreat back to the shadows of idealism, or would she step into the light of practical empathy? "I understand where you're coming from," she stated, choosing her words carefully, "but the investors must consider that their profits will sustain a community that's not just numbers on a balance sheet. They are real people with dreams, families, and futures." The confidence in her voice surprised even herself. Each word carved into the atmosphere, forcing attention upon the broader implications of their undertaking. Greg's expression didn't waver, but she noticed the subtle shift in the room. The developers turned their gazes, some genuinely intrigued, others skeptical. Perhaps it was the force of her determination, but she felt a burgeoning belief that she could sway this crowd. "Let us consider it from another angle," she suggested, pivoting quickly to maintain engagement. What if we leverage community support as an asset? When a project earns public favor, it gains loyalty and long-term viability, countering the fleeting profit margins you chase. Greg's eyebrows knitted together momentarily. She could sense the crack in his armor. That's a bold idea for someone without an investment background. Yes, she countered, but passion and perspective can be just as valuable as spreadsheets and projections. I live this every day. I see the impact of decisions made without regard for human elements. What happens when something we build falls apart because we didn't care enough to lay a strong foundation? Jessica's heart raced, adrenaline surging through her. She was aware that she had spoken from a deeply personal place, and the risk of vulnerability sent shudders through her. In a room full of fortified egos, could authenticity hold any weight? You're speaking emotionally, Greg replied, a hint of condescension lacing his tone. But the board will want to know what those feelings equate to in dollars. Let me tell you, she said, her face tightening with resolve. Each dollar stems from the trust that backs it. If the community feels abandoned, that trust erodes. Numbers might eclipse reality, but eventually, reality will insist on its return. With each exchange, her bravado grew, the hesitation she felt drained away, replaced by a fierce conviction. She sensed a pivotal moment unfolding. It was her chance to widen the rift in Greg's argument, to shift the conversation into unfamiliar territory where profits met purpose in harmonized coexistence. Jessica, I appreciate your enthusiasm, another developer chimed in, cautiously. But are you sure this digression won't cost us time? We need resolutions today. A delicate balancing act emerged. She realized she was standing on the cusp of not just defending her position, she was reshaping the conversation around broader values. Every second counted. I understand urgency, but we cannot rush into something that could end up hurting us more. Let us invest time now to save excess costs and damage later. As the murmurs grew, Jessica recognized an opening. She could either cement her newfound standing as an advocate or watch the opportunity slip from her fingers. Adjustments in her approach flickered through her mind. Could she meld grounded concerns with tangible opportunities, redefine what a return on investment could mean? Just when she sensed the tide turning, Greg stepped closer, his voice low and purposeful. Jessica, I have more resources at my disposal than you realize. This project's success won't hinge on community feelings. It will depend on cold, hard facts. Waiting for retorts was no longer strategic, she needed a tactical approach. She met his gaze, willing her conviction to radiate. I didn't say it depends solely on feelings, but ignoring them is perilous. If you want to truly maximize profit, you must understand the full picture. The dynamics are complex, and it is far more advantageous to lead with both intellect and heart. There it was. Jesse had discovered the interplay within this high-stakes game. But it sparked a new concern: what if he couldn't or wouldn't see her point? And yet, her journey wasn't just academic. It was burgeoning into a mission to retain humanity within it all, something far greater than either profits or losses. A somber weight lingered in the air, pregnant with anticipation. Could she fully harness this moment? As she readied herself for incoming rebuttals, the realization struck her: Greg's challenge had forged a stronger version of herself, one willing to confront adversaries head-on. Inwardly she braced for what Greg would slice through next. The tension felt almost electric. The stakes were escalating, her ambitions sharpened by the struggle. Would she continue to ascend, or would her voice falter under pressure? A new alarm rang within her. This was just the beginning of an intricate game. The struggle was not just against a rival, it reminded her that the hardest battles fought were often those against her self-doubt. The very real possibility of failure hung oppressively, engendering resolve as thick as the room's unease. And so the stage was set for her to rise, to refine herself, or find out just how deeply her convictions could be challenged. The next decision loomed heavy, bearing consequence. Would she retreat or boldly engage in the uncharted depths of corporate terrain and personal growth? Jessica took a deep breath, internally grappling with doubt but outwardly displaying a calm confidence. Each person in the room, especially Greg, was measuring her worth not only as a colleague but as a leader. She couldn't afford to falter now. Let us not ignore a fundamental truth, she pressed, feeling the weight of her conviction transform anxiety into fuel. Successful investments are more than a balance sheet, they're about relationships nurturing trust in what we offer. If we disregard the voices of those impacted, we're not just risking our profits, we're jeopardizing our legacy. Greg shifted slightly, but his icy demeanor remained intact. Could she reach him? The thought hung in the air, desperate for exploration. What if we devised a phased plan? Jessica continued, her thoughts racing. In the first quarter, we prioritize building partnerships with stakeholders, incorporating their insights. By the second quarter, we can reevaluate based on community feedback, making adjustments that will enhance both profitability and public reception. The murmurs in the room intensified, a chorus of indecision. Some developers looked intrigued, while others still clung tightly to their skepticism. Jessica felt a subtle shift, an urge to project even more authority. She had not come this far merely to participate in a conversation but to lead it. Greg, with all due respect, viewing our projects through a purely financial lens is short-sighted. The metrics you champion won't endure if we ignore the emotional investments of our patrons. This is not about giving carte blanche to sentimentality, but marrying it with strategic foresight. We have a chance to become a benchmark and example of modern business ethics. She noticed some heads nodding, an unanticipated spark of solidarity forming. Yet she felt the familiar stirrings of self-doubt lurk again in her mind, urging her to backtrack, afraid to overstep. She pushed it away, reminding herself of the strength she had summoned. Imagine, she proposed, if we framed our success story not just around financial gains but on our ability to uplift and empower those we engage with. When those individuals see our intentions, they become advocates for our projects, translating trust into tangible support over the long term. It's that type of resolve that attracts investment, not just monetary but cultural. She turned her gaze to the other developers, drawing them in, watching for signs of agreement. But then she faced Greg again, knowing she still had one critical element to confront. Tell me, Greg, can success be measured without considering how our actions resonate beyond numbers? If we only chase after profits, aren't we compromising our potential to impact lives, to leave a legacy that echoes beyond board meetings? The room held its breath. Silence enveloped them, thick with tension, yet she felt a sense of liberation wash over her. This was the very confrontation that tested her resolve. The pride she had once reserved for idealism now fueled her determination, revealing a newfound authority that even she struggled to comprehend. Perhaps, Greg conceded finally, lowering his voice into the stability of a negotiator. But I am only interested in feasible plans, Jessica. Where is the checklist that I can present to the board? She sensed defeat creeping in but channeled her energy again. Then let us build that checklist together. I will tirelessly gather feedback and streamline community involvement. Let us create a triage of solutions that merges financial responsibility with societal benefits. You will see, we can both secure profits and foster goodwill. Jessica's heart raced at her own audacity. Each word felt like a declaration, cementing her role as a fierce advocate, unwilling to merely play the game. But as Greg's features hardened again, she knew this push had risks. Would she come off as naive? Or worse yet, oversell her vision? As she gathered her thoughts, readying for the potential fallout, a deep voice cut through the charged atmosphere. This ambitious overhaul isn't going to silence the haters, darling. What if you're wasting our time? Jessica turned, her pulse quickening. It was another developer entering the fray, arms crossed, challenging her with an unwavering stare. A voice within her urged caution, yet she felt a surge of indignant rebellion rise up. Could she maintain her stance while handling a fresh wave of confrontation? The moment felt precarious as hooks of doubt and strength intertwined in her chest. Determined not to succumb to fear, she locked eyes with the intruder. I refuse to let skepticism be the shackle that limits us. If we aim to redefine business, we must be prepared to face the storm. But will we stand together to navigate through it? As her words lingered, charged with potential, she realized that this clash could catalyze the depth of her growth more than she had anticipated. The curtain was lifting on a much larger conflict, not only with her colleagues but within herself. Could she champion this cause, ensuring that empathy was no longer an afterthought in the corporate sector? As her pulse quickened, she felt the tightening grip of resolve, knowing the only way forward was to engage with fervor. But would they see the vision she clutched in her heart, or was it destined for the silence of dismissal? The room wavered, teetering on the cusp of transformation or upheaval. Clarity and doubt danced dangerously close, waiting for her next move. Time was ticking, the defining moment beckoned. Jessica stood at the crossroads of her emotional landscape, the air thick with the weight of what lay ahead. The meeting had reached a crescendo, with conflicting interests clashing, yet her voice carved through the chaos as she adopted a stance fortified by her journey. She was no longer the hesitant waitress in the shadows but a determined advocate prepared to navigate the complexities of power. Taking a risk sometimes means embracing uncomfortable truths, she declared, her voice echoing through the conference room. I refuse to allow this development project to miss the human element it affects. We cannot afford to build a legacy of profit at the expense of our community. Her conviction rang true, each word pulsating with the energy of lived experiences and heartfelt aspirations. Immediately, Jessica sensed a shift in the room. The developers exchanged glances, uncertainty rippled through the ranks. David, sitting at the opposite end, had adopted a posture of quiet respect, the tension visibly thawing between them. This was no longer just about one married couple's ambivalence, this was about the palpable concerns of the townspeople. One developer cleared his throat, his brow furrowed. It's a compelling point, Jessica, but we operate in a fast-paced environment. Can your outreach translate into actionable plans that deliver rapid results? Jessica hesitated for a mere moment, gathering her thoughts as if they unfolded from a reservoir of newfound assurance. Absolutely, let us start with a community advisory board comprised of families directly impacted. Engaging them in real discussions will lay out genuine concerns and expectations. Each suggestion tumbled out of her with increasing confidence, illuminating a once hazy path forward. Greg pursed his lips, skepticism seeping back into his expression. And what's the timeline? Can your community organizations even respond rapidly in a way that yields measurable outcomes? Agility is key, Jessica replied. Their voices will be the cornerstone of our plan, providing unique perspectives that tweak our due diligence processes. We can start consultations next week and adapt strategies as we learn. She felt a powerful conviction build. The idea they could work in tandem began to crystallize in her mind, transforming fear into potential partnership. As discussion flowed, Jessica noticed visible tension in Greg's shoulders. All right, let us say we were to partner on this, where's the return? How will we see physical, financial results from human engagement? Jessica met his challenge head-on. To invest in our community isn't merely an expense, it's laying the groundwork for sustained economic growth. When families thrive, they spend more locally, create businesses support and revenue return to the project organically. This isn't abstract, it's the fundamental principle on which lasting development must be built. The room fell silent, the gravity of her words sinking in. For the first time, Jessica felt an exhilarating rush of empowerment. Her stance resonated beyond the meeting, a testament to the gravity of human experience intertwined with economic viability. David gave her a nod, it was subtle, but it mattered. She realized her audacity hadn't just brought truth to the forefront, it had potentially shifted David's perspective on their shared values. This was more than a negotiation, it was a transformation of both personal principles and collective vision. As the meeting progressed, Jessica's focus sharpened around actionable outcomes. By the end, they had developed a preliminary framework that addressed her community's needs. The ambitious agenda shifted to include town hall meetings, economic impact studies, and grassroots outreach. Progress was no longer abstract, it was an integration of her passion and their ambitions. Stepping out into the sunlight after the meeting, Jessica felt the weight of an invisible yoke lift from her shoulders. She had accomplished what she once deemed impossible, advocating for her community, embracing her newly developed leadership, and influencing the desire for change at a corporate level. Her metamorphosis had been profound, not just in integrating herself professionally within a realm she had feared, but in embracing the fierce advocate she had always harbored deep inside. Finally, she turned to David, who stood beside her, a wary smile crossing his face. "You really won them over. I didn't expect you to push back so expertly." "I didn't either," she confessed with a laugh, the sound ringing with the satisfaction of her triumph. "It was time to let go of self-doubt and embrace my voice, for myself and everyone counting on us." David took a deep breath, as if acknowledging their shared past, shifting perspectives toward an uncertain future filled with potential. "I realize now how different our definitions of success have been. Your vision is inspiring." Jessica smiled, feeling a warmth envelop her. The work ahead wouldn't be easy, but she had come full circle. She was no longer unseen or unheard. She was emerging as a resilient catalyst for change, armed with the confidence to stand tall. Now, as they walked toward the exit, she felt ready to face whatever came next. With newfound recognition, she could forge a path that honored the past, embraced the present, and inspired possibilities for a thriving future. You need to subscribe now to catch more exclusive emotional stories like Jessica's journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Comment your reactions and theories about her transformation. And don't wait even one more second to share this empowering video with at least 5 friends who need to see that change is possible.